We'll get you going. You can sit where there is one. Okay.
I'll sit right here. Oh, really? Okay. The number is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no. Right here.
Did you find it's on her? Okay, yes. We're told to give a little disclaimer, this is being live streamed and it's already started recording, so anything you say or do can be held no. Just kidding. Will be recorded. We're gonna wait till 5 o'clock in case there's someone that would like to get here.
Are my judges ready?
Yes.
All right. From the time I was a child, my imagination has been a part of me that I have kept very close to heart. Like most people in this room, when I was a child, I imagined myself as something more than what the world saw around me. I imagined myself as a wizard or a superhero. I used my toys as something more than what everybody else thought they were. Powerful weapons or just super cool objects, unlike anything anyone else could see. To this day, I believe my imagination is still just the gift that keeps on giving to me. And I believe that everybody else is meant to let their imagination shine in some special way. Good evening, my name is Donovan Owens, and I believe that in order to help cultivate a decent imagination, one of the best things you can possibly do for yourself is gain a good and solid foundation in early childhood reading. Now you might ask, why did I choose this project? How do these items relate to each other? If you can see up here, I have actually 3 little brothers, 2 of which are visible right here. I chose this project because I love these 2 very much, and I want whatever's best for them. These 2 are probably the wildest children you will ever see. They run around the house, they throw their toys, he'll scream at my dad, "No, Daddy, you know better," or anything like that. However, in the sense of books, I've tried to sit down and read with them several times. They enjoy reading with me, but they aren't always able to appreciate books in the same way I am. They will a lot of the time interrupt me while I am trying to read. They're really rough with the pages. They'll tear them out or wrinkle them. And I believe that they should have a better understanding of the books. Now it is important to keep in mind, they are only toddlers, so it will take a lot of time for them to understand this. There are other times though, they will actually sit with me, they will be quiet, and they will let me read to them. Sometimes before my brother, the oldest, Caleb right here, will go to bed, he'll be like, "Hey, can we read one of your books?" I keep a whole bunch of books in my room from my childhood to read to them. And sometimes they will actually sit and they will enjoy it. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, children are wild. It is impossible to get them to sit still for more than 2 seconds. So, such a big responsibility that falls in parents' hands to give their children a good start to reading. So you might ask yourself, where do you start? How do you help your children sit still for even 5 minutes and get them to learn to start reading on their own? In the 1980s, the Public Library of Long Island, New York held what was called the Reading Together program. This was an event where parents could bring their children in, which were between the ages of 6 and 36 months old. What would happen is they would bring their children to the library and train professionals who were specifically trained for the spirit of early childhood reading. They would be there and they would sit with parents and help them just read with their children. They would give them pointers or any helpful advice which would help give them an idea of how to break through and get their children to start reading with them. Also, to provide some perspective, they provided several statistics which they believed would help them understand just what they were getting themselves into, including but not limited to the fact that 74% of children who struggle with reading into the 3rd grade, which is a very, very big milestone for independent reading, will also show signs of the same trouble even into the 9th grade, which is freshman level. The point of providing this in my presentation is to show you that nothing like this has to be done alone. Everything is easier and way less scary if you're doing it with a friend. Even areas like our own library in town offer story time for children. Literacy programs are offered all over the place. Trained professionals who can help parents at least get a better idea of how to help with their children and how to help them take one step closer to their independent reading. This is a photo right here that's very close to me. When I was a child, my mom was a very busy woman. She worked at a bank and she was always busy. We didn't have a lot of time to go out and do big things like Silver Dollar City or vacations to Florida or anything like that. But as you can see, we didn't need that to be happy. It was the little moments in our lives that mattered, such as a simple cookout when my aunt or uncle would come over to visit us. As such, it's also important to consider that there are just small things that you should keep in mind when you are starting to read with your children. One thing you should keep in mind is that children are only children. When you start reading to them, it's going to be difficult, just as I've said it is with my brothers. They're not going to want to sit still for very long, and it's going to be difficult for them to stay concentrated on what they're doing. However, luckily for us, not all is lost. Their attention spans will grow over time, and they will come to appreciate it. But their minds are only able to understand so much at this fragile stage of their lives. Mr. Knapp, one of my sources in my research, he told me that it is important to consider this. You won't be able to read War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy perfectly after the first, the second, or even the 50th Dr. Seuss book. It's just a process that takes time. Another thing to keep in mind is staying focused with what you're doing. Like I've said, children will have trouble staying focused on what they're doing. They'll want to point out everything else in the room, I can tell you for sure. My brothers do the very same thing. Keeping distractions to a minimum, such as the blaring TV, wild noises outside, barking dogs, things like that. It is important to keep those to a minimum in order to create an environment that's best suited for reading projects and things like that. However, you'd be surprised to know children aren't the only ones who struggle with keeping on task with what they're doing. Who do you think this job falls into the hands of? Parents, right? Parents are the ones who start their children's early reading. However, some parents don't feel that this part of their children's lives is very paramount, and as such, sometimes they have trouble keeping on task with this too, which is why it's so important to consider this. If parents treat reading to their children as a chore and they read very, very boringly, their children are going to see it as a chore to read too when they're older and they're supposed to be reading on their own. However, if you're like my dad back here and you read expressively and make it an enjoyable experience, kids they'll actually want to read. They'll actually enjoy the idea. That photo that you saw of me a moment ago, that was taken 10 years ago. I don't think I could have gotten to where I am today without the aid of all three of my parents. All of them have been loving and supportive of me ever since the moment I emerged from the womb. Parental involvement, not just in early childhood reading, but in their education in general, is a very, very crucial factor to be considered. Most parents might think that while they take a pretty big role in their child's early childhood reading, they might think that once they start school, it's on the teacher's hands. Now, I am free. I'm afraid it's not over just yet. Outside of school, it's important for kids to put into practice what they're doing, and parents are the best person to help them put what they are doing at school into practice, such as reading for just a little while every day one of the books on the shelf. They say the key with any sort of relationship is communication. This is no exception in the case of parent-teacher relationships. Parent-teacher conferences are a very common part of school-based society these days. However, some parents don't take into consideration when kids are having problems. If parents and teachers can actually be real and communicate with each other, thinking, okay, what does my child need? How can we help them succeed? That alone will provide a lot of room for improvement in their child's early education. Ever since I was a child, actually, I practically live and breathe the idea of a beautiful fairy tale. You can see right here, this is Princess Belle's Rose from the story of Beauty and the Beast, one of my favorite fairy tales. Happily Ever After is a very special concept that I keep close to my heart. I love when everything works out, when love prevails. It's just a beautiful idea for me. All these stories have inspired me to take up my own creative writing. Some of my relatives could tell you, I do my own little bit of creative writing on the side. For now, it's just a creative outlet for me when I don't have school or work to worry about. I decided that this would be a good way for me to channel this and make a more practical use out of it. Now, you recall how I told you I love the idea of a great happy ending, right? However, there are some stories that don't have their happily ever after. The story of Romeo and Juliet is known to very many people. Romeo and Juliet were two teenagers who fell deeply in love, but their parents' families fought with each other gruesomely. Unfortunately, the war tore Romeo and Juliet apart, and they both ended up dying in the process. I was not okay with this. I am not okay with an unhappy ending, and I decided I would write my own sequel. The story Star-Crossed is very near and dear to my heart. What it means to me is that even in the darkest times, when it seems absolutely impossible, as it did in the original tale, love can and will prevail. Romeo and Juliet, they do succeed in my story, spoiler alert, just as I believed they deserved to. The original tale ended tragically, which was a little difficult for me to work with, so I had to manipulate a few things. But my story begins at the end of the original tale. I altered a few things and ultimately made a pathway to a brand new adventure, which hopefully ended with a little more satisfaction than the original tale. Over the course of this project, I faced several challenges. The first challenge I faced was writer's block. This is when you are writing a story, it's going along really, really good, but then you mentally hit a brick wall. You don't know what to put next in your story. Your stories can take so many different pathways, but you either don't know which one to take or you feel there is no path left. I faced this challenge about probably 3 or 4 times, but luckily was able to work through it with the help of my amazing mentor, Miss Donna Parrott. Donna is creative and a very intelligent woman. She pitched new ideas to me when I thought there were none left, and I would be forever grateful to her for that idea. Another challenge I faced was choosing a research topic. If I haven't made it clear by now, all I knew about this senior project was that I wanted to write. I enjoy my creative writing very, very much, but I couldn't think of a research topic that would pair very well with this. But then my brothers came to my mind, and I thought, what better type of research to go through than one that comes out of a place of love for them and a desire for them to have a good future. The final challenge I faced, this is no excuse, but I don't know if you've noticed, we came back to school from a COVID crisis this past year. It took about a month or 2 for me to sit down and actually realize, oh, I have to put my butt in a chair and actually get to work. I wish that I had started just a little while sooner writing my story so I wouldn't have felt quite as rushed to get it finished. But throughout this project, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I enjoyed writing, and I learned that that is my way of expressing my imagination. In terms of my creativity, that is who I am. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, our imaginations are a very important part of us. Think of what all our imaginations have inspired throughout this year. They've inspired really cool pieces of technology, such as the Chromebooks our judges are holding, or the smartphones in our pocket. And they've also inspired things like amazing pieces of architecture, such as the Eiffel Tower or the Great Wall of China. In my mind, our imagination is our greatest and most powerful weapon. And if we can learn to let that part of us shine more, the world will become, in my eyes, a very much better place. Thank you for your time. Do my judges have any questions? Yes, Ms. Bremer?
How many hours did you spend on your story?
Oh my goodness. The writing process itself, I wrote from about October to mid-February, so it was about 5 months long. Mentor hours-wise, I was only able to complete 13 because of the snowstorm we encountered. It took some time away from us. We couldn't even leave our houses. So we had a little trouble getting the time we needed.
And when you read to your brothers, do you read expressively and do characters?
I do my very best to do so, just as my dad did with me when I was a child.
Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Spencer?
Is your product in play form like the original, or did you write it in prose?
I wrote it in the form of a novel. I actually did consider doing it in script form, but I just figured it would make more sense for it to be kind of a novel, just because that's the kind of book style I enjoy. Yes,
So if you if you didn't choose Romeo and Juliet, which storyline would you continue writing? Or were there any others that you didn't find as satisfying?
Oh my goodness. Romeo and Juliet was the one that stuck out to me the most, simply because it included the idea of true love, and it just kind of tied into the idea of true love from all the original stories I've read. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what other storyline I might have chosen had this not been an option. Yes?
Is this something you want to pursue?
I actually have considered a writing career, and I don't know if you noticed, unfortunately writing is not a job that will pay very well. Not that that should be taken into consideration, but I know I'm actually reading a book right now, and the author of it actually does writing as a side job, like I might end up doing, and has an actual day job. So It might be like a side career that I end up pursuing. Who knows? Anybody?
I agree with you on reading is very essential. That, you know, I remember my childhood, and, parents reading, but everything you do in life requires being able to understand what you're reading and being able to read.
Yes.
And knowing how to do so, it just opens everything for you.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So good subject, very good.
Thank you so much. Is that all? Thank you very much.
She's helping me.
Can we breathe again?
Like, are you gonna be in the circle to do that?
Never mind.
Everybody hug.
I'm sorry, Alyssa, I was probably like.
Job myself.
My mouth is so dry.
Yeah. And then they just kind of went. It's in a pattern.
I haven't been pressing my face in an iron, I know that. Sure.
Yeah. Maybe.
How's that?
Oh, thank you, it's always good to see you.
I don't do that in church. I gotta have telephones, so I gotta breathe that.
I'm staying. I'm gonna
It's a
be
fun
more
place
support
for
my
you.
friends.
Oh,
George presenting this stuff.
Good to see you.
You too, guys take care of it. Yeah.
gonna feed you some?
We have pizza, yeah.
I thought I seen you.
You too, yes.
You go
Yeah.
home.
Excellent job. Excellent. I enjoy seeing it.
I am going to change the more comfortable clothes, or we'll see if I can stay.
You have to move
You
it
have
over
to
to
click
the
on
side
the
of
letter,
book.
not
That-
the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that out. I was like, I can't read this word.
For doing that, everything.
I'm just staying here until.
Okay.
I am here because I was given my schedule by his wife.
Well, that don't mean nothing.
We know.
Good.
Click here to start over, and then you're back where you were.
Brandon, Hoover caught a whole bunch of fat heifers.
Do what?
Hoover caught a whole bunch of fat heifers, didn't tell you about. Years old.
Just a little power cord out
Should be ready for you. How are you?
there.
Your ID is.
Technology is playing my butt off, but it's.
So do you want to everybody I'm gonna leave this here, this is the presentation. Is that all?
Okay, yeah, like,
That's all right.
I'd rather.
Oh, okay, all right.
You want this one?
Oh, she hit it instead of something. Do it again. He'll leave one. Yeah. Did you get one?
No, I did not get one of Kevin's.
We have a second, Judge?
Got all of it.
No.
Oh, okay.
Got a little matrix, it's not what it did.
No, I'm just
No, there's six. There's six.
It's easier if it's normal, up and down, the paint with those arrows on the side.
Little arrows,
just
okay,
so
like that?
that'll
We
make it
have
easier for you.
judges as Adam,
Yep.
Dr. Martha Cummings Waller,
That's me.
Pinky, Brendan,
Yeah.
Wilson, okay, Aaron, and.
So you know.
Pinky, Pinky got one. She's here. I don't know. Do we not have any more, Emily?
Yeah, I'm not judging this one.
Oh, you're not?
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's why.
That's
You were like
Then
so
you got my-
confused.
Oh, you can't read
Please.
anyway.
Okay, so we're.
Okay, so I need to get out of this.
Do you want to log off? We got it out.
Yeah, it
Click to
says
start over.
wrong product or judge at the top, and you
And
can
she
just
didn't-
click here to start
Okay.
over.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, I'm just clicked in for next time.
Okay, sounds good.
We're gonna work on a car next.
My judges ready? Very well. My name is Kevin Christopher. I'm sure every single one of you have sat in a wooden chair, or at one point in time have or are. I don't know if these are wooden or plastic. They look plastic to me. But have you ever taken the time to think of where that chair came from, what it was made of, how the wood got to that spot to be made? I personally decided to do this woodworking project because of my past. As a child, I grew up on a farm. I worked with stuff consistently all the time, with all the tools I had at the farm, taking things apart. At one point, I even took apart an AC unit. My father had just told me not to take apart and ruined it. It was brand new. I still remember that because I got yelled at quite a bit for it. Like I said, it started at a young age, and that's why I picked this project. It's always interested me. From the ages of, I believe, 7 to 14, I'd always worked with Legos, built things to impress my family, always thought it was cool. I don't know if they're just egging me on because they thought, let them be, let them play with Legos, or they thought that was actually cool. But I always believed they thought it was cool. And it's really the availability. And my grandparents and my parents, I always had tools to work with, wood to work with, things that I could get my hands on and play with. Woodworking's beginnings. The history of woodworking goes back to the dawn of time, but where I first picked it up was in church from the Bible. You have Moses' staff as an example, the Noah's Ark, and the cross that Christ was crucified on. Like I stated, it was more than likely since the beginning of time because wood has always been here and will always be here. The way it shaped history, woodworking shaped the U.S. If you look at when they came here in the first place, when we came here in the first place, you'd be chopping down trees to make your house, to make your fire, to do everything. You'd have to chop down a tree, cut it yourself, make your house. Now we have mills, and those are even going out now. You just have lumber yards where you pick up your wood and have somebody build the house for you. You start with the frame and put plastic or metal over it to make your house. Other uses for wood, like I said at the beginning, you have chairs, desks. It's more than just houses, what I'm trying to get at mainly. Woodworking technology, modern technology for woodworking. You have a drill right there, it's a compact drill. You have a Craig's jig, you have wood glue, you have a square. All that's modern. If I tried doing this with my hands, making this chess table, it probably would have taken me 4 years, all 4 years of my high school career. But with these tools, it only took me 2 to 3 weeks to make. And I even used a free funded 3D editing app to make a chess table that I wanted to design with the SketchUp app that our school funds. Like I said, modern items are all made with things like these. Craig's jig, your compact. Reasons for modern tools, it all makes the job easier. Like I said, it would have taken 4 years, more than likely, to make a chess table with my bare hands and the tools that people used to use, like shivs, hammers, files. These are all just to make the job easier and go by faster. Why I made a chess table? Whenever I turned 16, I got my car, I'd wreck it a lot, and I'd go and fix it back up. That was what I decided to start doing. It's a terrible idea, it's a big waste of money. But I figured for my senior project, I'd revisit something that I did whenever I was a child and start working with wood again. It's a lot cheaper than a vehicle. I picked chess as well because it's a classic game. It's easy to tie into the history of woodworking. It goes back to medieval times. Whenever they played it, they had chess tables and chess boards. Struggles with the project. A big one was time. My mentor is Mr. Bell. He's the wood shop teacher. He's a bus driver. He's a father. And I had work it as well at the time. And I was a student here at the high school. Another thing was the mistakes and accidents I made on my project. The snow hit, and it was about 2 weeks gone from the school year of snow. And so I was hurrying to fix my project and make sure I could get it done on time, and made mistakes to it. I cracked the board in a couple places, tore some screws through the wood, and I had to go back and fix all those. The big thing with my project isn't so much making it, it's learning to do it. I had a huge learning experience from this project just by looking at my teacher, Mr. Bell, watching what he did and what he showed me and how to make the project work out the way it should. He taught me how to use a Craig's jig. He also taught me how to fill holes in the cracks I made in the wood that I had ruined pretty well, where it was still usable on my project. And I watched others around the shop to do my project. I watched especially Logan Crane and Austin Burgess. Logan was making a race car, but in the shop he was making, I believe it was a flag out of wood, and Austin made a rocking chair. So I watched both of them and the techniques they used to teach myself how to make this project all come together. This is my finished product right here. All in all, I believe that I chose this project because of how it affected me whenever I was a child, and it was something I really wanted to come back to as a senior in high school. And it was something I could really tie into research and something I could truly get behind as a student. And that is all. Do you have any questions for me?
What kind of wood did you use?
I used pine for these pieces right here, and I wood burnt the black pieces in. I used cherry oak for the edge. And the rest of this right here is pine that has just been burnt.
What made you want to use epoxy as a finish versus other finishes?
That's a good question. As part of the learning experience, these pieces didn't sit right in the table at all. They all sit up and down from each other, and these boards didn't sit right. So instead of using a finish, I decided to use epoxy and cover it up so it would be smoother on the top. I could still look down and see all the pieces in there, but it would make sure it was smooth on the top and everything sat well.
What are your plans to do with the board now?
I plan to either keep it in my house or sell it. I probably couldn't sell it for much, in my opinion. I did a great job on it, but it's not the greatest board in the world. And it's something I could keep around the house and play on whenever I wanted to.
Now that you've done this and you said, you know, your mistakes or something you would like differently, do you think you'll ever make another one?
I believe I would. I mean, since I made this, I believe I can make one like that just as easy in a lot faster time without making as many mistakes as I did.
What do you think are the advantages of making mistakes?
The advantages of making mistakes, you learn from them. Like I said, with this project, I didn't want to build something and be absolutely perfect. I wanted to learn from it and learn from my mistakes. And I believe all the mistakes I made on here will help me in the future progress on my woodworking techniques and all my projects that I continue to do.
Thank you.
That's all the questions? Thank you, guys.
Dinner.
Sesame.
The part is telling you you haven't graded that one, where it's red.
I'm not down there yet.
Yeah, oh, got it.
I'm having trouble getting it to, making little circles.
Click on the letter on this.
Just click on the letter, right? Thanks, ladies.
Sorry.
That's all right, that's right.
I know.
There's something wrong with this, it's not working.
We're learning from our experience that's over here.
Thank you.
Just give me 100. That'll work out.
Yeah, hey.
All the way down through there.
You want these?
If you don't want it, I'll take it back, it's up to you.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
I'll seal
save
it in
it
this
forever.
envelope
He's gonna
and
keep
keep
it.
it for all time.
You can frame
Hang it in the shop.
Out of
No,
wood.
it's going in the office, not the shop.
Frame it.
That way I look at it every single day when I come in.
He can make you a wood frame.
Yes.
Yes.
I can.
I'll hang them out if you do that.
You were judging.
I'm supposed to be here this time, see? Oh my.
So,
I just
I
assumed
think
I was in this room all night long, so I just assumed. She said she needed judges in room 119, so I just went click, click, click.
Yeah, so we're all here. Yeah, there's three. There's six. So everybody that's in here, everyone inside a Chromebook.
I'll leave it. I have all of this stuff.
Okay. Bye, Pinky.
See ya. Thanks.
Are you starting another one?
Are you here for the next one too? Thanks.
Yeah. I hate moving.
Is George still down to the couch or something?
Right.
Well, he got his
Yeah.
stitches out today, and he was very disappointed in that he's not gonna be able to take a shower or anything for another 2 weeks. He can't drive, he can't twist, he can't turn, he can't put his hands over the head, or lift anything over 5 pounds. So that means he's gonna have to put up with my driving.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Over there, you're trying to go back to nature for that shower.
Teach him if you want to. Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this one too.
Right.
Numbers.
See, yeah.
George,
Well, Pinky, you first.
Yeah, this is
And your
home
phone.
vehicle maintenance.
I'll take care of it, don't worry.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah.
It's
No,
helpful.
it's been used to never. Okay.
Yep, it's on that too.
Oh, shut up. I mean, how much is a person needs, you know what it is?
I don't know, it was like 8.
Well, that's because you're married to the head of the mountain.
Yeah.
You can sit anywhere there's not.
This is fun. Thanks for your help. I've been looking forward to this one. He's got some extra surgery.
Yeah.
Darn good paper. Oh, I'm sorry. It is a very good paper.
Mhm.
That's one of my favorite parts.
Probably took longer than the project.
What's that?
Probably took longer than the project.
Most of these things do.
Yeah.
Very nice. You know, they don't have this year, they don't have anything that just deals with the research papers. In years past, I think they did, didn't they? I mean, per se.
Right. It's a little different.
It's enmeshed in something else.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to do the disclaimer and I forgot to the last time. This session is live streamed, so everything that we say will be recorded.
So,
Yeah.
Are you guys judging from if I stand on the line, or that's just for me?
He didn't know we were supposed to.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are supposed to or not, because they said the lines are to help you, but I like it a little more like this. So I can see it.
You do you.
Are my judges ready?
yes.
44,643 car accidents yearly are due to some vehicle attribute that is wrong before. That means that something is wrong with the vehicle before the accident actually happens. Hello, my name is Michael Kirtanov, and my senior project revolves around home vehicle maintenance. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says that you have a 1 in 366% chance of getting into an accident if you go on a trip that is 1,000 miles long. I did the math, and that's about 0.003% of you getting in an accident, so you should feel pretty safe driving around. Out of those 44,000 accidents, 43% of those accidents are due to tire failure, which means you either didn't change your tires on time and your tire blew out, or you had poor tire pressure, so when you slammed on your brakes, your tire came off the bead and you weren't able to stop in time and you spun out of control. Only 35% of those accidents were due to some brake vehicle or some brake, engine, or transmission failures, which is slightly less, but if we keep up with our maintenance, we can bring that number down lower. There are multiple reasons for vehicle safety maintenance, but I chose two. I chose safety and I chose longer lasting vehicles. I put safety first because a lot of us can remember as when we were first learning how to drive, our parents would get on to us to be safe when we're driving outside because we don't know who the other driver is and how they're driving. That goes anywhere from people who are drinking and driving, and people who are texting and driving and distracted driving, but also people driving vehicles that aren't maintained properly that can become a road hazard when we are out on the roads learning how to drive. So safety on your vehicle is very important to keep the roads clear of hazards for new beginners to learn how to drive properly. Then I put longer lasting vehicles because those two vehicles on the sides are, the top one there is a 1990 BMW 325i, and it currently has 2 million miles on it, and the person bought it straight new off the lot. He says that he does his vehicle maintenance like the owner's manual tells him to, and he washes his car once a week to prevent any rust from happening to the vehicle once he's been in wet conditions or in snowy conditions. The vehicle below that is a little more impressive because it's an older vehicle. It's a 1966 Volvo P1800, and that vehicle currently has, and still counting, 3 million miles on it. The owner of that vehicle says that he changes the oil every 2,000 to 3,000 miles, and that he makes sure he keeps up with all the maintenance. He says if anything makes a weird noise or sounds like it's not in the proper place where it should be, he goes and gets that checked out before it breaks or before it leads to a problem that could further on make the vehicle unsafe to drive. He also recommends to wash his vehicle after every time that he goes through a snowstorm or any roads that have been iced or have been salted so that the roads are more dry and clear to drive on. There are two different ways that you can do your vehicle maintenance, and you can do it at home or you can take it to a shop. I don't prefer one over the other as long as you get it done, but here are some differences between the two. If you do it at home, it'll cost you a little bit less because you order the parts that will be cheaper to buy from online sometimes than it will be from the store or from the shop that you're going to be getting your maintenance done at. Versus when you take it to a shop, that will cost you, the part that they buy is on the shelf will be a little more expensive than if you buy it online, and they will also mark up a price for the labor, and they have to mark up price to pay the employees that are working at the shop too. You learn in the process when you do it on your own or when you do it at home. If something that goes wrong as you're working, you know that you need to buy another part to fix that before you start driving safely, other than when you take it to the shop and they get it done for you. If you have a really good mechanic, they'll tell you what they did to the vehicle, but if you just take it to like O'Reilly's, they'll just change the oil and they won't tell you what exactly they did, and they'll just charge you a sticker price. It'll save you a lot of time if you do it on your own because you don't have to wait in line for somebody else to do it. Sometimes when you get into a shop just to change your oil, it'll take you from 30 minutes to a couple of hours depending on how full the shop is. Or if it's something more labor intensive like changing the timing belt or the timing chain on your vehicle, it can take up to 3 to 4 weeks before the shop can even get to your vehicle. So you'll have your vehicle just standing in your garage without you being able to use it. And when you do it on your own, you're more honest with yourself because if something breaks, you know where that broke and you know where to get into and you know how well you fixed it. So you know if you fixed something and it was kind of not the best job that you could have done, if something happens, you know where that problem could be coming from. To where if you take it to a shop, sometimes they will tell you that they did something on it, and just because they haven't been making enough money that month, they can charge you extra on top of that. And this is by far not every shop does that, but some shops tend to lie about the things that they do so that they can keep up with their money income coming in so that they don't go out of business. The product that I did in my senior project was me changing the gaskets on my 2009 Subaru Legacy. So the gaskets in this engine are on the sides of the vehicle, which means that to do that I had to take the engine out of the vehicle. And that was something that I didn't figure would be too difficult because I did my research for it and it showed me how to do it. So that was pretty easy and self-explanatory. And then I needed a technology aspect to make that my official senior project. And I thought I'll just take a video of it because video editing seems like something easy and fun to do, and little did I know that it was very not easy to do. Working on the product was fairly simple. I did my research beforehand. I spent a couple hours online trying to figure out what the better option to do this with, and like if I should do it by myself or if I should take it to the shop, and I decided to do it on my own. I found an hour-long video that described how to properly take the engine out of the vehicle, take it apart, and put it back together to where it would start and keep going like it's supposed to. And on top of that video, I did my research and I looked through the owner's manual and a couple of other websites that showed that Subaru would recommend this way to do it, and that that's the proper way to maintain your vehicle. Then when it got to purchasing the parts, it was fairly simple. I could have ordered them online and saved me about $50, but it was during COVID and I had no idea how long those parts would have taken to come in, because sometimes you can buy a package and it'll take you 2 weeks to get in, or you can buy a package and it'll get held up for a couple of months. So I didn't have the guarantee of knowing when I would have those parts in to start on my vehicle. So I went ahead and drove up to Springfield, Missouri and bought some parts from O'Reilly's, and the total cost for those parts was about $250. Performing the maintenance was fairly simple. As I said, I found a vehicle video that showed how to properly do everything. And it took me about 16 hours to pull the engine, take it apart, clean it out, and put it back together to where the vehicle started again. So that was fairly simple, and the owner's manual tells you exactly what to do and to what specs to work everything. The hardest part by far was the video editing, and one of the reasons it was so hard for me because I didn't know that having an angle on your camera would be so much more difficult than it looks, because sometimes we'll go and watch a YouTube video and those people probably redid that one shot a couple of times before they got it in and edited it. But I figured I could just take everything in one take and then I'd edit it out as I'm working on it. But I have a tendency of placing a wrench down and then walking around for 20 minutes trying to find that same wrench. So I had out of those 16 hours, about 8 of those hours was me walking around the vehicle trying to find the wrench that I just used in the frame. So I had 2 minutes of productivity in the beginning of the video, then for about 18 minutes I had nothing productive except me walking around, and another 2 minutes of productive video at the end. The challenges that I acquired that I faced during this senior project was acquiring new skill sets. Starting vehicle maintenance was something that I've never done before. I've never worked on a mechanical part of an engine. I've done some body work, I've changed tires, and I've changed oil before, but I've never actually taken the part of pulling an engine out and taking it apart to where nothing works and it's just metal, to putting it back together and starting it to where it's a combustion engine again. Editing software was something that I had to learn. When I got together with my mentor to ask him what he would recommend, he showed me what products and what software he uses, so I was like, I can use that, and I downloaded it for free. And I got so excited about it because it was so simple and it tells you what to do and how to do it, that I got 30 minutes of the product done right away. And when I went to save it, it had a big watermark over the middle of it. So I was like, oh. And I ended up having to purchase the editing software before I could do anything else, because that clearly wasn't gonna work if I had a watermark over my video. So the video software cost me around $200, but I got lucky and they were doing a discount, so I only paid $75 for it. And my third challenge, and by far the greatest challenge, even past the video editing, was trying to upload the video to the internet or to YouTube or to even Google Drive. To this day, I haven't been able to do it, so I store it on an SD card. If anyone wants to see it, I have it there on my laptop, the full hour-long video that I've cropped out, and it shows how the vehicle gets dismantled and put back together to where the engine starts. And like I said in the beginning, 44,643 car accidents are due to some pre-vehicle attribute, which leads to many deaths and many dollars spent in emergency department visits and in parts replacements after the accident has already occurred. So if we all can do our part and take care of our vehicle maintenance properly, we can lower those numbers and increase the chances of people surviving car accidents and save some people some money with them if they were to get into a car accident. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
How much money do you think you saved since you bought the parts for about $250? What if you had taken it to a shop to have that done? How much do you think it would have been?
So if I take it to a shop, the parts from the shop would have been at least $30 more expensive, and then I would have to pay anywhere from 10 to 15% price for their labor versus the 16 hours that I spent onto the vehicle where I got to learn something and I took stuff out and took information out of it. It was cheaper for me to do it on my own and learn something than it was if I took it to the shop, and they would have charged me, I think, $600 to $700 for that one replacement part. And if anything, they could have probably found more problems with it that didn't need to be done because the vehicle worked just fine before. So I think I saved around $500 by doing it by myself.
And for your mentor, did they help you with the car at all, or were they just
No,
strictly video?
They were strictly for the video editing.
Okay, you totally did the car on your own?
Well, I had a mentor to start with that, and I was gonna have him help me with it, but he got so tied up with his family because they did soccer and they played basketball, and he just didn't have time. He's like, texted me about 2 weeks before I got started on it. He's like, I can't make it because I'm just too busy. And I was like, all right. But I already had all the research done before that, so I knew what I was doing, and I just got started on it.
How are you gonna use this knowledge in the future?
Well, I found it pretty simple that anything that I did on this vehicle, it pretty much attains to any other vehicle. That the owner's manual tells you when to change your oil on what kind of oil to put into it, when certain parts usually go bad, and it tells you when those parts should be replaced. And right now with the internet, you can find anything that you want online, and they'll show you how to properly do something. So out of that, the vehicle that I had, I traded it for another one, and I found a video on how to fix the vehicle that I traded it for, and it was pretty self-explanatory too. So anytime anything happens, whether my car goes bad or an engine light comes on in my car, I can fix that, and I won't have to worry about taking it to a shop and spending time there.
Wonderful.
Did you have all the tools you needed, or did you rent some from like O'Reilly's or borrow them, or?
It's an interesting story. So when I got started on it, I bought the parts, and I got home because we had enough sets. We bought about 6 or 7 sets to work on, and you know how it is. You use a part and you lay it down and then you don't ever find it in your garage.
Yeah.
Well, we cleaned the garage out before, so we had about half the tools that we needed for it. So I ended up making about 2 more trips to Springfield to buy all the tools that I need. So out of that, I think I needed a breaker bar, which we had, and I bought 2 more sets of keys just to work on it, in case I'll be working on one part and my dad was helping me working on the other end of the car. While I'm under it, he's standing on top tightening something down. So I bought 2 more sets just in case we can get done faster than I anticipated. So.
Aside from just being able to save a little bit of money, this must be something that you enjoy. Is this a hobby of yours that you plan to pursue in the future?
No.
No? One and done?
I did it because I needed the vehicle fixed. I have a new 2007 Lexus GS. Well, I say it's new. I got it last year. So I had a nice car, and I just didn't like going to work in it because as I was in Washington, and I worked a little bit in it, and I didn't really put material into the car. But when I got back home, me and my dad went to a job site, and we needed 2 1x8, 8-foot long cedar planks, and we had to put those in the car, and I made sure that the planks were wrapped before I put them in the car so they don't scratch any of my leather. And after that, I was like, I should probably fix my car because this is my work car, and it's a little easier to clean up, and it won't tear as much, so I got to fixing it. But the video editing and the photo editing, that software that I invested into, I do intend using that further down the road because that was interesting stuff to learn and how to figure out how stuff works. So.
Nice.
Any more questions?
They'll have to launch it. Yeah,
I don't know how I can
it just timed out on you.
Thank you.
You can go get some food. I could do that, because it's just down the hallway. Yeah, it's in the car, and I'll go do that, go up the stairs.
Okay. Somehow I believe that if I YouTube how to take an engine out of a car, I would not be successful.
Well,
You made it sound so fun.
There
so
was
easy.
about 6 or 7 videos that I went through before I found the right one that I was looking for.
Yeah, it was, I don't.
That came with the research part. I had to do about 2 hours of research before I found it.
Okay. That's amazing. I would have never ever tried that. No.
I didn't plan on trying it.
Not the goal.
Yeah, I think so. I'm double checking to make sure. Yeah, I'm out here for one, look like in here, and then 115.
I'm 9:15, that's
I'll
I'll
see you after all.
later. Yeah.
Gene? Not bad.
How are you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want some help with the crumb,
Never trusted you like that, huh? I think we're in trouble.
I think you're right.
You want me to move? I need to move over. Do you mind if I move in front of you?
Not at all.
I have noticed that it's difficult
Yeah.
when the room is wide. You know what I mean? Or maybe I'm projecting.
These desks have gotten smaller, I've gotten bigger.
I think it's a combination of both. How do students sit in these all day long? It's terrible. We're so sorry. What are we doing? You guys?
Yeah, but I was much more so.
Because he showed that angle was very, okay, and so I looked and I'm like.
Bring you up. You're gonna do yours.
I'm gonna do that later. I don't have time. There's just not enough
Do
time.
you have a preference on whether this light is on or off?
It shows it on their summary.
Take that and also pictures and everything on it. That's pretty.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So cool.
There it is. That's something new, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Are my judges ready? Okay, so on August 25th, 2000, there was a family of 7. The mother and father were gone because they had to work, so the 5 children were left home. They were raised around firearms and they knew how to properly shoot and they knew the proper safety of a firearm. So at the time, California had a state mandate where you had to keep your firearm locked up into a gun locker so kids could not have access to it. And on this morning, the oldest daughter woke up. It was around 7 a.m. Her name was Jessica. She was 14. She woke up to see a nude man putting on pants. The man proceeded to grab the pitchfork and chase her. Instinctively, she ran, and as she ran, she heard one of her younger siblings scream. But too frightened to turn around, she went to her neighbor's house to find some help. Her neighbors were not home because they also had to work in the morning, so she came back and she found out that 2 of her siblings had been stabbed and killed to death with a pitchfork. Her and her 2 other siblings went to the gun safe to get a gun, and then found out that they weren't able to open it because of the state mandate. So then they ran to the nearest town, which was about 15 miles away. So last year, the youngest daughter, Vanessa, wrote a short article, and she stated, if it weren't for the state mandate, that things could have ended differently because they would have been able to protect themselves from this man. I'm sorry, did I not grab the clicker?
On the table.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Hi, I'm Tyler McReynolds, and I believe that firearms are important in keeping people safe and not understanding the intricacies of firearms leads to unnecessary gun restrictions. So, when I did all my research, I wanted to research about the discussions of the far left and the far right side of the discussion of gun control and firearm safety. I also wanted to get the statistics of gun violence, crimes that involve guns per year and the deaths and lives saved due to a presence of a firearm. So every year there's about 40,000 deaths due to a firearm, and this was recorded in 2018, and it was through the years 2010 to 2017. And through that time they also reported that 300,000 to 3 million lives were saved due to the presence of a firearm, whether in use or in the holster of someone's holster. I believe that people kill people because it takes a person to point and shoot a firearm in order to kill another person, because a firearm is not capable of moving itself to shoot another person. I believe that, yes, guns are dangerous if put into the wrong hands, but if you give a good person a gun, they are less likely to cause a bad crime with it than a bad person is with a firearm. And it's not as prevalent as people say, due to the fact that if there's about 40,000 gun deaths a year, at most there's 40,000 crimes committed with a gun. But in this case, most cases of a misuse of a firearm and cause of a death of a firearm, there's usually more than just one person killed, meaning that there's less than 40,000 crimes committed with a firearm. And due to this, people are the problem, because good people are less likely to do a horrible crime with a gun, such as murdering people. And in the case of Vanessa and Jessica and their sister Ashley, with the firearm, they could have prevented this man with a pitchfork from killing their 2 younger siblings. So I believe that we should be limiting the access, but not taking away the firearms. I believe that if we limit the access to the incapable, such as those with mental illnesses who have been in prison for violent crimes, whether it was a crime with a firearm before or just someone who has violent tendencies, should not have access to owning a firearm, because they're more likely to cause a crime with it than someone who does not show signs of this. And because of this, there's no real fix, because good people can also cause bad crimes if they're put into a situation where they hit their breaking point and they snap and decide to do harm with a firearm. So my research led me to my product, which was an American flag gun cabinet. So you're able to open the stripes downward, where I have cut out the frame of an AR-15, its magazine, a .22 revolver, and a 9mm pistol. And you're able to open the stripes up to the side where the extra ammunition boxes and magazines can go for my firearms. And I decided that it'd be best if it was an American flag, because I live in America, and I want something to represent my country that I can have in my own room, where I can also store stuff that I could protect myself with. So when I started my project, it was in October when we first able to start our product. And I had been working on it for months. I worked up on it until February, which I'll get to later. I had to restart it due to difficulties. So with my process, I started with the stripes. So I took a piece of plywood and I cut out the stripes and I stained them and I put them on top. So that was my first step, and it took the longest of all the others. So then I had to decide the color scheme I wanted. So I went with black, gray, and white, because I feel like it gives it a more rustic, old feel, and it doesn't stand out as much if it was on like a white wall. as red, white, and blue. So I also think it looks distinct, and then because, you know, most flags are red, white, and blue, but mine is black, gray, and white. And I decided that because, as I've said, I don't know why I repeated that. So then after my stripes, I had to work on the frame, which also took a decent amount of time, making sure everything was square. And then I had to buy the Kaizen foam, which was probably the worst part because it cost me like $80 to get the right Kaizen foam, because if you don't get the right kind, it will cause rust to the firearm, which obviously I did not want. So with my challenges, my first challenge was during November, during Thanksgiving break. After we came back, my strips, due to the fact that we had a wet November, my strips were bowed because of all the moisture. So Shane Bell, my mentor, suggested that we put those braces on that I have right there. But with the braces, they added an extra 3/4 of an inch to the whole product, which also made it very hard to open my doors. So it wouldn't open completely, or the small one wouldn't open at all because of the extra height. And another problem I had was working on it at home because I'd have to leave it in the shop. But then Mr. Bell would always lock the shop up at night, so I wouldn't have access to it, and it would have been too much trouble for me to take the whole thing home each night just to work on it. And then the main problem I had was in February when I had to restart. It was due to the fact that other students in the shop class had been messing around, and they ended up spilling glue and paint on my stripes and like my whole project. Mr. Bell said I could be able to sand it all off and restain it, but I figured that would have taken too much time, so I decided to restart in February when it was due March 1st. So I had 1 month to work on it. So as soon as I scrapped it, I started to work on the new one. So I worked on it for about a week, and then I ended up getting tendinitis in both of my elbows, which is inflammation in the joints, so I was unable to move my arms past this point where I have them now. So I wasn't able to work on it for about a week and a half. Then when I came back, we had our snow break, which was about another week and a half or so. So when I came back, I only had a few days to work on finishing up the project, and at that point, all I had were the stripes cut out. So from that week, I ended up working on it, and then the weekend before it was due, I took it home, and I managed to do all this over the weekend. I got the stars painted on, I worked on the stripes, and for my stripes, I used several clamps because I wanted it to be held down firm and tight and for all of them to be straight. And in that last picture on the top right, you can see I have about 15 clamps on there, which took a lot of effort, but I ended up getting it. And then my final step was the night before when I was putting in my Kaizen foam. And this part doesn't look that bad, but it took me about 3 hours just to get it fit in, to put the guns on, and to trace them, and to be able to cut out the correct layer length, depth, because each part of a firearm is a different width than another. So I had to, like for the revolver, I had to make sure the chamber part was deeper than like the barrel because of that fact. And then that final picture I have is of me holding up my project the day it was due. And I felt pretty proud of this project due to the fact that I only got it done in about a little less than 2 weeks after all my mistakes. So I believe that gun violence cannot be stopped because everyone, not everyone, but there are people who can hit their breaking point, and they may own a firearm, and due to the fact that they own one and they hit their breaking point, they could go out and hurt someone with the firearm that they got. But it can be mitigated if we restrict the access to the incapable, like those with mental illnesses or violent tendencies. We could knock the numbers down. And as I've said, people are the problem because people kill people, and guns cannot kill people without another person using the gun to kill that person. Do my judges have any questions?
Yeah, when you did your stripes the second time, did you also use plywood?
No, for my stripes, I used oak. I
used a solid board that time?
Yes, and I cut it into 13 strips.
And that prevented the warping that you had the first time?
The first time was because of all the moisture that we had, but the second time when I worked on it, I put it in a much drier area, and when I worked on it the second time, it wasn't as wet as it was. I don't really think we got that I don't think we got that much rain at that time. So,
So you went, from the time you said you started the first one in October,
yes,
and was working on it continuously, you said basically in shop class, right?
yeah.
Okay. And then it was ruined when, in February?
After our break, like our
From the
Christmas
snow
break.
Or the Christmas break, so
Yeah.
then you came back in January and then there was a problem then, right?
Yeah, but at that point, after the problem, I like just took some time and I tried sanding it off and doing all that. But from what I had done, if you look down the stripes, you could tell that I like messed with it because of the old mistakes. So, and I didn't really want that. I wanted this to be better. So I figured in a couple weeks, I'll restart it after like I get all the wood I need and make sure I have everything ready to
Do you
restart.
feel pretty happy with how it turned out compared to the first one you were working on?
Yes, I feel like for the time that I had put into it, I feel like it came out pretty well.
And basically, from the time, because it was due, when was it due?
March 1st.
And so basically, you had less than a month that you completed it in with all the time off with out of
Yes.
school and everything else, right? Plus, you still just worked on it at school.
Yeah, I worked
Except for
on
that last weekend.
Yeah, I worked on it off and on. Like my first one, I worked on it off and on, and then I don't remember what happened. When I scrapped the old one, I think some other student took it and they just made their own flag out of it, but they didn't make a gun cabinet, so it worked better. But as a gun cabinet, my first one would not have worked.
It looks really good for having, I had to get it done in less than a month. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
really impressive.
Do you have mounting brackets on the back to hang?
Not at the moment. I own them, and I have the ones on the wall, but I just need to put the other set on the back for it to hang up there.
And one question about your information on guns present that saved lives.
Yes.
Where did you get that statistic?
It was on the CDC.
Okay.
I don't know why it's back here. I just.
I think you just, there you go. You've been playing.
Any other questions?
Open it up for us?
Yeah, I'd like to see the inside of it.
It's-
There's
I assume
nothing
it's empty,
in there.
right? Yeah.
So-
We're gonna have a whole different conversation here in a minute.
Another thing that I did, it's not really a big deal, but like for these stripes, I put screws in the back. I'll kind of hold it up so it's up. I kind of put screws in the back and like lines, because I felt like those lines just made it look a bit better. And the screws help them stay in place, so the stripes will not be going back to their original form if they were to bow.
And does the foam hold the firearm in place when it's mounted?
Yes, it does, but due to the fact that we're in a school, I was not able to bring the firearms.
That's
to the
good.
case.
Good choice.
Decision, yes.
Now, do those shapes actually match the firearms that you
Yes,
have?
I put the firearms on top and I traced them out with the silver Sharpie. Then afterwards, I took an X-Acto knife and cut those lines out. And then I put them in just to make sure. And for some, like this one, I had to make minor adjustments because it was too small and the gun didn't fit, but
And these are all guns that you own?
yes.
And the rifle there, what kind of rifle is that?
This is an AR-15 and this is a .22 revolver and this is a 9mm.
And I would imagine that down below is the clip or something?
Yes, that's.
Below the AR?
That's for like a showing of the clip and like faster access. And then right here, you're able to put more.
Gotcha.
So. And like for this sting, some people think it's a mistake for like, but I only put one coat on because I wanted the inside to look more worn out than the the outside. Because I don't know, I just wanted a more traditional and old looking gun case.
And do you have it, is it lockable?
It does have, well, I don't have a lock on it, I just have magnets on it to keep it holding up. I got,
Latch.
yeah, I got one here, and one up here, and then this one has here and here.
What it cost you?
For the wood, it was about $70, and then the Kaizen foam was about another 70 to 80, so a little less than 150.
Not counting what you put into the first one that got ruined.
Yeah, the first one was unfortunate. That was also like $60. But Mr. Bell, he helped me like get the wood for it, and then I paid him back.
Did a nice job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you done? No, just going somewhere else.
Little disclaimer, we're supposed to say that these sessions are all live streamed, so everything that you say and do will be held against you.
What's
Just
the trial?
kidding.
Are my judges ready? So living in southern Missouri, I'm sure that you've seen someone hunt whitetail, or you've seen a whitetail, or even hunted whitetail yourself. But what most people don't know is that there's different techniques you can use to hunt whitetail. Hi, my name is Kyle Wood, and today I'm going to talk about mounting mature whitetails. So for my research paper, I researched how to grow and harvest mature whitetail. I did this for my research because I knew that if I incorporated something that I liked, then I would be more apt to like be able to get it done and actually get it done on time and put more effort into it, I think. So most people think that hunting whitetails just starts in the fall, and that's not the case. There's a lot of early season preparation that goes into hunting whitetails, such as planting and other things. Checking trail cameras, finding sheds, patterning the deer, seeing where they're going to be at. And then once later fall hits around September is when bow season opens. And that's the early season is what it's called. And that's when you can manage your does, start to pattern your bucks even more, and that way you can properly harvest a mature whitetail. After bow season, you will move into the pre-rut, which is when the bucks are up on their feet a little bit. They're starting to move around some and starting to take a little rut action and chase some does to try and mate. So that will bring us into prime rut, which is right around mid-gun season in Missouri. That's when the bucks are the most active. That's prime rut. They're out on their feet all times a day. They're moving all the time. That's when you need to hunt your best spots, because that's the best chance you have of killing a mature deer whenever it's up on the hoof. And that would then bring you into late season, which is muzzleloader season in Missouri, late December, early January. The bucks are starting to lose their antlers. Some of them will. Other ones are still carrying them, but they'll fall off pretty soon. That brings me to my product. So for my project, I've mounted 3 deer heads in a European mount, and I put them on plaques. I did this project throughout the year. It didn't just start in the fall. I had to harvest them first before I could actually be able to mount them. So with that being said, going into the hunting, it took a lot of time and patience, in my opinion, to be able to harvest a mature deer, and then skin it out, debone it, get all the meat off of it, and then cut the head off. If you don't take the meat off of them, it's just wasting them, and I really don't think that anyone should do that. And then boiling them. Boiling the deer heads, put them down in boiling water. Some people put soap in there. You can put baking soda in there to help with the removal of the hide, and then you scrape the hide off, and then scrape all the meat off with it, and most of the time the inside of the brain cavity will just come out, because if you get it hot enough, it'll just come out. And then most people, they'll either, some of them paint them, they can paint them white, or you can paint them wherever you want to, you can put designs on them. Some people hydro dip them at that point, and then some people, like I did, just bleach them. Some of my challenges that I faced was time in the stand. I played football in the fall, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to be out there. I was going to school, and the only time I really had was on the weekends. And you know, if I had something going on that weekend, then I wasn't going to be able to get it done. And I mean, you got to put a lot of time in the woods if you want to be able to kill a good deer. And then cleaning, the cleaning of the deer, being as I had never done it before, I didn't really have much experience, and so it was kind of a learning curve for me. But I was able to get it done in a proper way and make it look pretty nice. And then woodworking, I'm not very good at woodworking. I had never really done a whole lot like that, but I think they turned out pretty well. I had glued on 2 of them. I had glued 2 pieces of cedar together and then sanded them down and then put a good epoxy finish on them. And then on that other one, it was oak wood, and I put a good finish on it too. I burned it a little bit to make it look a little darker. So now that you know more about hunting and boiling deer heads and mounting them, you can now go out and hunt some deer of your own if you'd like to. If you got any more questions, you can ask me. I'd be happy to help you out. I love hunting, love being around it. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
You mentioned that cleaning was one of the challenges for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean cleaning the head itself, or cleaning the deer, the entire deer?
It's both a challenge, but
Oh.
since I've cleaned deer before, that wasn't as big of a challenge. It's a challenge every time you do it, in my opinion. But cleaning the deer heads, it was more of a challenge. Sitting there scraping all of it off, it took quite a while to do it.
That was what I assumed, since
Yes.
you're clearly an avid hunter. I assumed you had cleaned
Yeah.
deer before.
So was more of your research targeted towards learning how to make the mounts or learning how to be a better hunter?
I think that I put them hand in hand. You know, that I made myself a better hunter. That way that I could make myself better at mounts, because if I wasn't able to harvest the deer, then I wasn't able to get the mounts done. So I think that since I made myself better at hunting and focused a little bit more on it, then I was able to focus more on the mounting part of it too.
One more question, sorry, I didn't mean to skip anybody, but how long did it take for all of these deer to be harvested? And did you harvest all these deer yourself?
No, because in Missouri, you only get 2 buck tags, one with a bow and one with a rifle. One of them is my brother's. So
Okay.
I had to ask him for some help. But other than that, yeah, they're mine. And it took about 3 weekends to get it all done. Did about one a weekend.
And is that the comment in your paper that you weren't sure your brother was gonna come through for you?
Yeah. I was
Gotcha.
hoping he was. He did a good job. The middle one is actually his. It's a little bit bigger than the other 2. We won't tell him that.
What role did your mentor play in this? Did they help you with the boiling, or where did they come in and help you?
My mentor, actually, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. He was going through some training in the police academy at the time, and so he was pretty busy, and I was pretty busy also. So our schedules, we just never really lined up. We only spent about 2 days together on it. And we did go hunting together once. We actually ended up harvesting some does that day, but other than that, we were both busy, and he's got a kid, and he just had a lot going on, which I understand.
What's your plan for these
I'm just
mounts?
home decor, just hang them up on a wall, let people look at them. That's the picture I actually, this picture right here is, I hung them up just to take a picture of them.
So you talk about the patterns and watching them first, then kind of nudging them into certain, how much land was at your disposal, and what
Well,
would you suggest for something like this?
my grandpa, he owns quite a bit of land, and he's got about 300 acres that backs up to the government, and there's a lot of people that hunt on the government, so I could pattern them before season and get them down because there's no one in the government, but opening day of rifle season, government just fills up because there's hunters coming in from out of state, from everywhere that come out there to hunt, which, I mean, it's public land, that's no problem, but they'll push all the deer over onto us. Actually, they'll run them all out, and that just benefits me a lot. I can pass them around or hold them up, it doesn't really matter.
Where did you get the wood for your flags?
This is my grandpa's. He let me have it. This one here's the oak one. And then these 2 over here are the cedar.
We don't hear it.
Would you ever be interested in mounting them without doing this whole boiling European, whatever that is?
Yeah,
Like
there's.
the taxidermy portion?
Oh, okay, like a shoulder mount?
Yeah, whatever you call
I
them.
mean, if I was ever experienced enough to do it, I mean, yeah, I could sure try, but
Mhm.
that takes a lot of time and experience. The people that do that, I think they're pretty impressive. 'Cause
Right.
It's hard work.
How many points does it take to get you out of the house?
How many points?
Well, you talk in your paper that you don't just shoot at everything.
Oh,
that
yeah,
moves.
I got it, them are all 8 points, but them's the little ones. The big ones, I get shoulder mounted by someone. I'll shoot it in 8 point if it's mature, but anything under that, I don't see any point in shooting it. It's not big enough, not mature enough. I let it grow. That way, maybe next year it'll be a big beard.
Long con.
Great stuff.
Disclaimer, now that everyone's here, we're supposed to let everyone know that every session is live streamed, so everything will be recorded, audio and video of course.
Do you like lights off in the front, or do you want them on?
Are my judges ready? July 30th, 2019 will always be a memorable day in my life and many others throughout the community. We lost 2 boys in a tragic car accident, one of which should be here presenting with us tonight. I remember the afternoon very clearly. We were getting ready, I was with a group of friends and we were getting ready to go swimming, and I remember getting a phone call. I remember it being kind of weird because we don't really do phone calls in this day and age. We just do texting and Snapchatting, but it turns out that that one phone call changed my whole life. Hello and good evening. My name is McKenna Cox, and I'm here to take you through the grieving process and what I did to overcome it. Zach White and Jonah Smith were two boys that I got to know pretty well this spring and the summer before their passing. I had grown up with Jonah in my class for as long as I can remember, so I really wanted to take this opportunity to do something to honor him and his families. I decided to research something that I never really understood in these types of situations, which is grief. Grief is defined primarily as the emotional reaction to the loss of a loved one or someone you're close to. Grief takes a great toll on the human body mentally and physically. Throughout my research, I decided to focus on 4 main points. The first one being the definition of grief. What is grief, how it comes about. The second point is the process of grief and its stages. In my research, I found there were 5 main stages of grief. The third point is the effects of grief. The effects mentally on the body and the effects physically on the body. And the last thing I decided to focus on in my research was overcoming grief, whether you can overcome it or if it's something that you have to deal with for your whole life. The grieving process is a great toll on anyone who has to go through it. It is different dependent on the person and how serious the situation is. In my research, I found there were 5 main stages of grief. It is possible to be in more than one stage at one time, and the stages are not the same for everyone. The first stage I found was denial. You're denying what's happening, you're in disbelief of what's going on, you don't want to believe what's going on. The second stage is anger. Maybe you're angry at yourself, maybe you're angry at that person, or maybe you're even angry at God for letting something like this happen. The third stage is bargaining. This is a very rare stage. If someone were to go through it, it's also a very short stage. It's like a plea, you're pleading for that person back, you're yearning for that person. The fourth stage is depression. This is the most common stage of the grieving process, and it's also the most overlooked stage. Along with grief having its own symptoms, depression has its own separate symptoms that people go through and they deal with for the rest of their life. And the fifth and final stage is acceptance, accepting what's happened and moving on from what has happened. Throughout my research, I also found some statistics on the effects of grief as a country of Americans. The first 83% of Americans have mental effects from grief, such as inability to sleep, depression, sadness. 39% of Americans experience physical effects, such as fatigue, headaches, aches and pains. Overall, us as a country are struggling with grief right now. 57% of Americans have dealt with grief in the last 3 years. So overall, us as a country are really going through the process of grieving right now. Overall, I learned throughout my research that grief isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's going to feel like the worst thing in the world at the time, but after you go through all the stages and all the symptoms, you're going to be a bigger and stronger person for it. The most important thing I found throughout my research is that you want to find the meaning behind the loss of the person that you have lost and make it your purpose in life and move on. So for my product, I decided to paint a mural at the football field in memory of Zach and Jonah. I painted a 3x6 foot mural with half a basketball court and half a football field. I knew for a while that I wanted to paint something for them. I knew for a while I wanted to do that for my project, but I didn't know exactly what to do or the design of it. But with the help of some friends, I finally chose to do something to incorporate the things that they loved, which is the sports that they played. Both Zach and Jonah had planned to play football the year of their passing, and I grew up watching Jonah play basketball. He was a varsity starter, so I thought what better to do than those things. I incorporated their hashtags underneath each side. Jonah's under the basketball court and Zach's under the football field. And I also incorporated their numbers in the field, 81 on the football field and 12 on the basketball court. I had never painted something to this scale before, so I didn't really know where to start, but I started off by cleaning the wall and sketching it on there with pencil, measuring out the measurements. And then I began painting with maroon. If I were to do this project again, I would not have started with maroon. I would have started with the base tan and the green on the fields, but at the time the maroon was all I had and I knew I needed to get started with my painting, so I began with maroon. And then I went through and started the base layers on the basketball court and the football field, began doing some fine touch-ups with the numbers, which was pretty difficult. But then after that, it was all details from there, stuff like outlining, painting the hashtags, and lining on the basketball court. With the great success of my painting, I did face a lot of challenges. Again, like I said, I'd never painted something to this scale before, so I really didn't know where to start, but with the help of my mentor, Miss Megan Schultz, our high school art teacher, she got me started on the right foot. Another big issue was the time I had to do it. I did play a fall sport, and it went a lot longer than I had planned, which isn't really a bad thing, but it got me off on a much later start than I had wanted. I also have a part-time job that occupies my time. I had planned to get my painting done the week of Christmas break, but considering the late start and the time I had to do it, I did indeed not get it done until the last week of January. With the time that I had to do my project, weather was a big issue. I was out painting in the snow and the ice many, many times with layers on, with gloves on, my hands almost freezing off. But I did find a few warmer days at the end of January to finish on my product, and it turned out very well. Throughout this project, I not only got a better understanding of what grief is, but it also helped me overcome it myself. I finally found the meaning behind the lives that we lost, and I finally found my purpose from it. July 30th, 2019 will always be a memorable day in my life and many others in the community. In doing this project, I hope the memory of Zach and Jonah is shared throughout the community for years to come. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
You said you hadn't painted anything to this scale. What else have you done?
I've done projects in our art show, our Alpha Rotah, and I'm not really a painter. I'm more of like a sketcher, like with pencil or colored pencil. So I really haven't really painted something with this type of paint before.
And the numbers you did freehand?
I used like stencils from it, but on the wall it was mainly freehand.
Okay.
Did you design it separately first?
Yes, I designed it. The sketch is in the middle of my board. I first designed it. The first sketch did not look like that. It was very rough, but I decided to do one with color to figure out the colors that I needed and lay everything out. And also get the measurements to transfer it from that onto the wall.
What would you have done differently, if anything?
Well, the wall that I painted on, it's concrete slabs like that, and it was very difficult to paint in all the little holes, so I probably would have done it on something and then hung it up on the wall if I were to do it differently.
When did you start painting and when did you stop painting? Like how long did it take?
I started like the last week of October. I think it was like the 28th or something like that. And then I finished in the last week of January, so it took me about 3.5 months to complete.
What type of paint did you use?
I just used outdoor exterior paint. I think it was gloss.
Is like the painting in a spot where like you have to worry about weather or anything like weighing it down?
No, I decided where I was gonna do it all because of that, because of the time I had to do it. It's next to the concession stand at the football field, so it's underneath the pavilion part, so I didn't have to deal with like rain or anything like that.
I'm assuming you would have to have an approval process?
Yes.
To be able to do that?
Yes, I had to contact Dr. Spence, and I had to send him what I had planned to do, and then had to get approval for where it was before I began the process.
Did you find yourself, as you were painting, using that kind of as a healing tool also?
Yes, yes, I used it as a way to overcome my grief. But when I was talking about overcoming grief, I feel for me, you don't really overcome grief at all. You do deal with it for the rest of your life, but you find a way to deal with it throughout your life instead of actually overcoming it. But this did help me deal with my grief, yes.
Have you heard from other students on whether your painting has impacted anyone else?
Yes, I showed the painting to their families, and all the students had messaged me saying how much it meant to them. Lots of them saying it made them cry, which kind of hurt. It didn't really hurt my feelings, but it made me sad for them, but I'm glad that they really enjoyed it and felt from them.
You said you found like kind of the meaning of like but like through the grief you found like meaning. Is that meaning kind of like living your life to the fullest for both boys?
Yes, definitely, I would say so. Are there any other questions?
I'm like, you're wanting me to turn the end up, yeah.
Anybody has questions?
Is anyone else feeling stuffy? McKenna said she's.
Oh, I just started.
Those of you that might be judging, do I need to turn the air back down, or are you comfortable right now? Stop that. You want the air turned down, or she
I think it's fine.
more back here, so. Congratulations, thank you for helping.
Thank you.
Whether want to accept that or make sure I put here, so. Maybe some presentation is up there, but I'm just, okay, there it is. I was like, so when it's black and then maybe nervous. It did that earlier. I had to go further with the mouse. I did not do it. I think there's something that's black. Yours first slide must be black, is that right? Yeah. Kind of freaks me out. Okay. Oh, Sherry. Okay. We've got about 7 minutes. Do you need a break or anything? We've got about 7 minutes. Do you need a break? I mean, but it can't be longer than 7 minutes.
Or if I just want to finish.
I know, I was the same way.
Just roll.
I don't.
How are you? Yeah, I'm welcome. disclaimer, we're supposed to say that all of these sessions are being live streamed with audio as well.
Are my judges ready? I think we can all agree when I say nature is a beautiful thing, whether it's going up a hiking trail on the weekends or just commuting back and forth to work on the weekdays. Yet after all of this, man plays a key factor in the destruction of its beauty. Hello, my name is Braden Wagner, and I believe that landscaping can solve this problem and many more. So I looked into many topics when I was doing my research paper, and the first of which was pretty much some insight and background in landscaping. So I researched some history. So landscaping is not a new practice. On the contrary, it's actually rather old. It has been traced back over thousands of years ago to the extent of the Roman and Greek eras. For example, it was used to create decorative gardens and many other structures such as temples and just houses that took upon rather intricate designs. Some other incredible structures that have been built throughout history would include the Great Wall of China. Basically, the Chinese brought in people who specialized in laying foundation and clearing trees and not making a mess out of it. And so they pretty much laid the foundation and built the wall. As well as the other 6 great wonders of the world. They were also helped with the aid of landscaping. Something that boosted landscaping to where it is today was the creation of the lawnmower back in 1830. It was created by a man by the name of Edward Budding, and this was basically a great advancement for the field of landscaping. It allowed people to mow their lawns in a better way. They were actually using scythes before the lawnmower was invented, so the scythe was awful in 2 ways. I mean, first of all, it was just impossible to use almost, and second of all, whenever you're doing this motion, your last cut won't be the same as this cut you're doing now. So your garden or lawn would come out uneven. And as you can tell, landscaping has changed quite a bit from what it was, mainly due to technological advancements. As every day goes by, technology advances. So now we have, instead of pushing mowers, we have zero-turn riding mowers, even mowers that can mow the lawns themselves with the help of AI. Something else that has been noticed today in the field of landscaping is its increase in jobs, especially after the Great Recession of 2007 through 2009, where millions of people lost their jobs. And yeah, after that, people just started opening up their own businesses. It became a hot job, I guess you'd say. Government started hiring many landscapers to do government landscaping. It is also a favored profession and pastime. So yeah, it's a job, of course. You have millions of landscapers nowadays, many that go into business for themselves or work for the government. And it's also a pastime because you can just go outside and make improvements to your lawn or garden and call that landscaping. So of course there's many tools used in this process. It always depends on the type and task. So if you're going to be doing a small job such as improving your garden, you're going to use simple tools, simple hand tools such as shovels, trowels, rakes, hoes, and other simple tools such as that. And the government, whenever the government's doing a landscaping job, it's usually a bigger job. So they will be using stuff such as tractors, trenchers, which is basically a tractor with this chainsaw-looking implement on the front, and it digs a trench for irrigation or pipes, as well as bulldozers. It always depends on the how big the job is. So there's many benefits that come from landscaping. It benefits people. So like, for example, if you're gonna be building a skyscraper for people to live in or to work in, you're gonna have to lay a foundation, and the government usually brings in landscapers for that. It'll also benefit communities. So if, what I think is a park looks better than a abandoned building. So if you're gonna be landscaping in town, you might add a park like this in this picture here. And it also benefits nature. So if you're gonna be planting flowers during the summer, that will attract pollinators, which further benefits nature around it. My project. I chose landscaping mainly because I didn't know too much about it. At first I thought it was just slapping a few flowers in the ground and calling it good, but I found it was much more than that. It was actually a rather hard process. So my product, I've done a few things around the ag building. I cleaned up some metal, and I also leveled out this corral, as you can see in the background. We basically lifted it up and put pea gravel and dirt and leveled that out. So now they can use that. There was a few benefits that came from my product. Right here, this is the back stall behind the ag building. It was filled with metal. You can see something right here. That's what we were dragging out. And yeah, basically it used to be a storage stall, but after the metal took over, you couldn't really put anything in there. So we got that cleaned out, and afterwards they instantly started storing stuff in there, such as the shop vac and metal racks. Two things can benefit from the corral, people and cows. People can benefit as it's easier to give cows shots whenever it's level, of course, and it actually works. Cows can benefit from it because they have a smoother ground to run on instead of falling down the side. And I faced many challenges. First off, the broken trailer. So when we were moving the metal out, our trailer kind of broke in the middle of that process. So we kind of had to stop that. The axle snapped and we couldn't get it. It was just irreplaceable. And the second challenge was our schedules. My supervisor, Mr. Grant Talbert, he's an FFA teacher. So during this time or period, he had a lot of places to be, mainly at competitions such as forestry. So he was out like 2 days every week, so we could only meet on like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it's kind of weird to say my schedule, but I had a schedule as well. I live on a farm, so basically during this time period, it's when the negative temperatures started coming into Missouri. So we had to feed our cows probably like 3 times every week, so that took quite a bit of time. And I believe landscaping can help solve many problems we face today, and it's rather beneficial to almost everything around it, such as people, nature, communities. And thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
So you thought the landscaping at first was just throwing flowers in and you're good?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about it.
So do you feel like you may want to continue on into this direction and go a little bit further in and make it a job?
Well, I found it rather interesting. Yeah, that could be a career choice in the future.
So where did you haul all the metal off to?
We brought it to a scrap yard in Mountain View and made a little money off that and getting some scrap out of the way.
Was it enough to repair the trailer that broke?
Oh, no, that was irreplaceable.
So does do our FFA have cows? Do we have cows at the school?
They don't have cows, but they will bring in cows from other places, and pretty much they'll have competitions where they'll see who can work them the best, give them shots. So yeah, they'll be using that.
So that was
in the
very
future.
beneficial for
Yeah.
the school itself.
What made you finally decide to settle on this topic and the end project that you did?
Well, I found it rather interesting. I wasn't really too sure what landscaping was, so I found it interesting to find out more about it. And that's basically it. I thought it was just interesting.
Do you know how much a landscaper makes on average a year?
I actually researched that. I believe it's 36,000. That's just the average.
Just the average for
Yep.
Missouri or for the United States?
For the United
For
States.
the United States.
Yeah, it depends. If you're going into business for yourself, that's probably around the average. The government, of course, will pay more, but, yeah. Any other questions?
You did a good job.
Thank you.
Seems like something Mason would do.
Can you share?
You can get it.
Yeah, dessert. Two? Alyssa. A little disclaimer, especially for our new guests, that these are all live streamed. The audio and the video can be held against you. I mean, that was not necessarily just pointed at you, but.
I said I could be in worse places than this, like I could be in prison right now. Like, that's the only worst place you can think of right now.
Not like in geometry.
Yeah, that would be worse for me.
What about middle school?
I would prefer to go back to middle school and high school. I mean, high school, I'm gonna go college. I said I'm ready to go to college. Yeah, I went 2 years of college.
And you're gonna be awesome.
Big and big. I'm gonna travel around the world. Ready all these days. Yeah, I'm gonna travel with this. See as much of the world as I can before I have kids. And, you know, it's good.
Are my judges ready? 67 children. That seems like a lot. In reality, it is. Kindergarten through 12th grade, there is a total of 67 children that have died in a school shooting. So this is why I chose to do my research over school safety for all and build the product that I did. Hi, my name is Madison McDaniel. So my causes for this was my causes for the school shootings was they were exposed to violence. Shooters that have been known as young children, they were exposed to video games such as Grand Theft Auto or even Call of Duty, and they are even exposed to toxic environments. These toxic environments can involve very abusive homes or even verbally or mentally, and so this can cause their mental health to go down and for them to not have a very good home life, and sometimes even at school they're not having the best life. That this could cause them to get bullied, and so all around they're not wanting to be at school or anywhere, and they just can't turn to anybody. So these shooters, 95% of the time, have it 2 weeks planned ahead of when they're wanting to, like what they plan to do to the school, where they're going, and where they plan on entering or even exiting. So ways this can be identified is the odd behavior in the shooters. The shooters usually tend to act different, especially with 2 weeks. Like a 2 weeks notice can cause them to act very different, and you can just tell that they're distancing themselves more than they are. So if this were to ever happen, I think teachers need to start making a connection to the right direction. So start noticing these odd behaviors, preparing their students if anything were to happen for this. So the ways to help. The first way I thought would help is preparation and training with the students and teachers. So with this, teachers need to, like, are going through drills, such as we do here at Willow, actually. Going through the drills if this, and such a tragic thing were to happen at Willow, and just preparing them and seeing what's in the classroom, the best ways to exit. Another way is the counseling at school. Counselors need to be prepared to help any kid through the mental stability. So with this, they should be able to help the kids, like, what they need to do, and even if they need it, to send them to better therapy. So the way I wanted to help was to build a window screen safety. The reason I chose this was Officer Moore came up to me because I was struggling I couldn't figure out any kind of product to think of and how I want to benefit my school. So he told me that the school's been thinking about this for a while, and so I decided to do this, and I was only supposed to do one part. So as you can see up here, here's the file that we had to start with. Walden had to teach me how to use the plasma cutter and what to do with this. So, because I had no clue. Like, I dropped out at sophomore year, so I never got to play with this experiment at all. And so he had to teach me how to use the plasma cutter and how to put the file in it. And the file actually took us a lot because we had to go through the school board members and ways to help, like, so something that was good for a window, and so a shooter can't go through. So that's why we actually added these little, like, frames so that if a shooter were to come here, that they can't just, like, break through the window through a hole like that big of the barrel. So this is to help, like, prevent the shooter from easily ripping it off, and because it's welded on, and from ripping it off from the wall. So I decided on this, I went with a black spray paint. It is what looked best to me on the wall with it, and what I think would have looked good with this, on this window. So the way we put it up is we use, like, these little small drill bits, which we had to drill in and then put these squeeze things, which I actually had to have my dad come help because I'm not the strongest person with this type of tool and didn't have much experience with it. And so it took me the whole 6 months to do this product, and Mr. Walden actually was just there to supervise. He didn't help me, and he just helped me put it up. Other than that, he told me how to do the product, and then he went on with it. So this is my final product. It is a metal sheeting that goes up about 3 feet up on the window and covers the whole window, where the shooter would have to climb over it to even gain access to the window. But you cannot just easily rip down this part. And like I said, it is drilled with, like, there's a total of, like, eight drills into it, so you can't just, it's not, like, bendy or anything, and it is stable on there pretty good. So challenges that I think made it to new skills is the new use for power tools. I had no clue how to use power tools at all. I always depend on my brothers and my dad for this. So Walden told me, the first thing I told Walden is, like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm a girl was my excuse. I was like, I don't want to do this at all. Like, I'll have Nathan come in or something. And he told me, he goes, no, you're going to learn how to use it. So I got to learn a new use for welding, like some kind of cutter thing, which I still don't know the name for because I don't plan on using it again. And this may sound silly, but not to botch spray paint. For this project, it was actually very important, so it looks smooth whenever you're looking at it and not just tacky. So Walden actually caught me one day spray painting it, and he's like, you are going to botch that bad. And I was like, it's just spray paint, so I don't really see what the big deal is. So he taught me how to re-spray paint it and to make it look like a smooth covering. Time management. I know you're probably going to hear this from every senior about time management, but like I said, it took us a full 6 months just due to me being a full-time athlete and having practices after school, and Walden not want to go into the weekend so that we're not taken away from his family that he gets to spend with them and the time I got to spend with my family, because we know with seniors that time is very precious to spend with their family. And then independent. I learned how to be more independent, like not having to depend on a guy, and now I can use these type of skills to go take out to the real world and not have to worry about calling upon someone and do it myself. So 67 children are killed in the U.S. kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm hoping with this product that it can make a change and hopefully help spread to other schools and go throughout our elementary and middle school and make a difference. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
So that was out here on the high school?
Yeah, it's like, so you know where like the office you come
Mhm.
into, it's on
Yeah.
that window on the side one. So.
And there's hopes to put them on all the buildings?
Yeah, that was the plan, like originally, if this wasn't gonna take so long, like I was actually gonna help them put it on like the middle school and elementary. But I'm not sure where they're gonna put it on in the elementary or anything, or in middle school.
And
But
so
that
you
is the
have all
plan.
those windows that
Mhm.
open and poor ventilation.
Did you research other forms of the window screens or to settle and determine on how you ended up making it?
Well, like I said, Austin Moore came to me with the idea, and I guess they already had the metal like sheet in mind. So that's kind of what we went with because it is the most sturdiest. So, like I think that answers your question.
Yes.
So how you attached it to the building is not, you can't come in with a tool and easily remove it?
No, like I'm trying to think of what it's called. Like we drilled in a little hole and then you had to like squeeze like this. I cannot think of
Like a
what it is.
rivet?
Resin?
Riveted one?
No.
It's a fastener.
Yeah.
Fastener.
Yeah, we'll go with it.
Yeah, I'm not the brightest with
It's okay.
tools.
It's okay, it's okay.
But like we just screwed it in pretty tightly, but I think that has to like be pulled out. I'm not sure what they did.
But you can't easily unscrew it and remove it?
No, with that it'd be time consuming, and by the time they'll be on their way, it'd be more time consuming for them to go through that. Oh, any more questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
See ya. Do you want these turned off or?
Sure, they didn't really give us directions on what to do with them, so we'll ask around and then do something here.
Randy's wrong. Surely like here, this in the back. This is my worst fear. It's being an adult trying to get in and out of these school seats.
Thank you so much for your help.
Sure. I'm turning these off or?
I'm just shutting them down, just closing them for now.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, probably, I think I'll just.
Mike's over to the side. Yeah, I think we do that, and just put it at the very top, whatever we.
How'd it go?
Good.
Really well. Really good, smoothly.
Yes.
Thank you. Not any problems. And all the kids did a good job.
Yeah, they do.
They really did. I always feel for them during this. That's a lot to ask of an 18. I know adults can't.
Yeah.
So, they did a really
It's a
good
good
job.
experience for them.
It's
It's
a
a
great
lot.
experience.
Yes, it
I
is.
mean, it's a needed
Yeah.
skill. They did a really good job. Very, extremely varied subjects as
yes,
well,
very
you know,
much.
so it was good. I'm not sure, are we supposed to do anything with the
I'll
computers?
grab the box. I think Andrew will put them back, I hope. Because I don't know where they are.
Does the clicker stay in here or does it go in the box?
It should stay in here.
I'll leave it on.
And do we just leave the computer and?
Yeah,